Once upon a time, in a land not so far away, lived a beautiful and kind-hearted girl named Cinderella. Her life was filled with sunshine and laughter, living happily with her loving father. He adored his daughter, and their days were full of joy. However, everything changed when her father decided to remarry. He chose a woman who, at first, seemed pleasant enough, but she had two daughters of her own who were anything but. One day, Cinderella's father had to leave on a long business trip. He kissed his daughter goodbye, promising to return with wonderful gifts and stories. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and he never came back. It was as if he had vanished. With her father gone, Cinderella's world turned upside down. Her stepmother revealed her true colors, and they were cold and cruel. She was jealous of Cinderella's charm and beauty, which far outshone her own daughters Anastasia and Rosella. From that day on, Cinderella was no longer treated as a member of the family. She became their servant. Her stepmother and stepsisters forced her to do all the chores. From dawn until dusk, she scrubbed the floors, washed the laundry, cooked the meals, and polished their shoes. They took away her beautiful dresses and gave her old ragged clothes to wear. They even made her move out of her comfortable room and into a cold, dusty attic. Her only friends were the little mice who also lived in the attic and the birds that would visit her window each morning. Despite her hardships, Cinderella remained gentle and kind, always dreaming that one day her life would change for the better. Meanwhile, in the grand palace that overlooked the town, the king was growing impatient. He wanted his son, the prince, to marry and settle down. So he decided to throw a magnificent royal ball. A royal proclamation was sent throughout the kingdom, inviting every eligible young woman to attend. The king hoped that among them the prince would find his future bride. When the invitation arrived at Cinderella's house, her stepsisters were ecstatic. They shrieked with excitement, dreaming of dancing with the prince and becoming his chosen one. For weeks, they talked of nothing else. They ordered new gowns, fancy ribbons, and sparkling jewels. They spent hours preening in front of the mirror, practicing their curtsies and their most charming smiles. Cinderella's heart fluttered with a tiny spark of hope. She, too, was a young woman of the kingdom. She longed to go to the ball, to wear a beautiful dress, and to just for one night escape her dreary life. She timidly asked her stepmother if she could go. Her stepmother and stepsisters burst into laughter. "You go to the ball," her stepmother sneered, "in those rags. You'd be the laughing stock of the entire kingdom." But Cinderella didn't give up. She remembered a beautiful dress that had belonged to her mother, stored away in an old trunk. With the help of her little mice and bird friends, she lovingly repaired and redesigned the dress, adding pretty ribbons and bows. When she came downstairs on the night of the ball, she looked truly lovely. For a moment, even her stepsisters were speechless. But their jealousy quickly turned to rage. "How dare you!" shrieked Drizella, ripping the sash from her waist. "That's my old ribbon, and those are my beads," cried Anastasia, tearing the necklace from Cinderella's neck. They tore and ripped at her dress until it was nothing more than a pile of tattered rags. Laughing cruelly, the stepmother and her daughters swept out of the house and into their carriage, leaving a devastated Cinderella alone in tears. She ran out into the garden, her heart completely broken. All her hopes were dashed as she sobbed under the willow tree. A soft, shimmering light began to glow beside her. She looked up and saw a kind, gentle-faced woman with a sparkling wand. "Don't cry, my dear," the woman said with a warm smile. "I am your fairy godmother, and I'm here to help you go to the ball." Cinderella could hardly believe her eyes. With a wave of her wand, the fairy godmother began to work her magic. She pointed her wand at a large pumpkin in the garden, and in a flash of sparkling light, it transformed into a magnificent, gleaming white carriage. Then she tapped 4 of Cinderella's little mice friends, and they grew into 4 majestic white horses to pull the carriage. A plump rat became a cheerful coachman, and 2 lizards became dashing footmen. Now, all that was left was Cinderella herself. With another flick of her wand, her tattered rags dissolved into the most breathtakingly beautiful ball gown Cinderella had ever seen. It shimmered like starlight on water, and on her feet appeared a pair of delicate, sparkling slippers made of pure glass. Cinderella was speechless. She looked like a true princess. As she was about to step into the carriage, her fairy godmother gave her one final, important warning. "This magic is powerful, but it will not last forever," she said. "On the stroke of midnight, the spell will break, and everything will return to what it was before. You must leave the ball before the clock strikes 12. Now go and have a wonderful time." Cinderella promised she would remember. She thanked her fairy godmother with all her heart, climbed into the magical carriage, and was whisked away to the royal ball. When Cinderella arrived at the palace, everyone turned to stare. No one recognized the scullery maid. They only saw a mysterious and stunningly beautiful princess. The prince himself was captivated the moment he saw her. He walked right past all the other ladies, including the fuming stepsisters, and asked Cinderella to dance. From that moment on, he danced with no one else. They waltzed around the grand ballroom, talking and laughing as if they had known each other forever. Cinderella was so happy she completely lost track of time. Suddenly, she heard the distant chiming of the clock tower. Bong dot 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 bong dot dot dot. It was starting to strike midnight. "Oh, I must go," she exclaimed, pulling away from the prince. "But I don't even know your name," he called after her. But Cinderella couldn't stop. She ran from the ballroom, down the grand palace staircase, and into the night. In her haste, one of her delicate glass slippers slipped off her foot and was left behind on the stairs. She jumped into her carriage just as the final chime of midnight rang out and sped away. The prince rushed after her, but it was too late. All he found was the single, tiny glass slipper she had left behind. He picked it up, determined to find the mysterious princess who had stolen his heart. The very next day, the prince issued another royal decree. He would personally visit every house in the kingdom and have every young woman try on the glass slipper. The woman whose foot it fit would be his bride. The Grand Duke travelled from house to house with the slipper on a velvet pillow. Many women tried to force their foot into the delicate shoe, but it was no use. It wouldn't fit anyone. Finally, he arrived at Cinderella's house. The stepsisters, Anastasia and Rosella, tried desperately to squeeze their large feet into the slipper, but it was impossible. Just as the Duke was about to leave, he asked, "Are there any other young women in this house?" The stepmother quickly replied, "No, there's no one else trying to hide Cinderella." But at that moment, Cinderella appeared at the top of the stairs. The Duke insisted she be allowed to try on the slipper. The stepmother tried to stop it, but it was too late. Cinderella sat down, and the slipper slid onto her foot perfectly. It was a perfect fit. The stepmother and stepsisters gasped in shock and horror. Just then, Cinderella reached into her pocket and pulled out the other glass slipper, the one she had kept. The prince, who had followed his duke, knew instantly that he had found his true love. He took Cinderella's hand, and this time he didn't let go. Cinderella left her old life behind and went to the palace with her prince. They were married in a grand ceremony, and they lived happily ever after, their lives filled with love, kindness, and joy. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more magical stories. From the moment she stepped into the grand ballroom, a hush fell over the crowd. Who was this radiant, mysterious princess? Every eye was on her, but the prince only had eyes for one person. He walked directly towards Cinderella, his heart completely captivated by her grace and beauty. He bowed, asked for her hand, and from that moment on, they were inseparable. They danced the night away, lost in their own world, as if they were the only two people in the magnificent hall. Laughter filled the air, and their connection was undeniable. The prince was enchanted, certain he had found his true love. But Cinderella, lost in the magic of the evening, had forgotten her fairy godmother's crucial warning. As the grand clock in the tower began to chime, reality came rushing back. Dong, dong, dong. 12 strokes. The spell was about to break. Panic seized Cinderella. She had to leave now. Without a proper goodbye, she uttered a quick apology to the bewildered prince and turned to flee. She ran from the ballroom down the grand marble staircase, her heart pounding with every step. The prince, confused and desperate, called after her, but she couldn't stop. In her haste, one of her delicate glass slippers slipped from her foot and was left behind on the steps. She didn't dare turn back to retrieve it. She just kept running, disappearing into the darkness of the night just as the final chime echoed. Leaving the prince standing alone, holding nothing but a single exquisite glass shoe and the memory of a magical night. The next morning, the prince was heartbroken but fiercely determined. The mysterious princess had vanished, but she had left behind a clue. He held the tiny glass slipper, a perfect, sparkling symbol of the woman who had stolen his heart. He vowed he would find her, no matter what it took. He immediately issued a royal decree. His Grand Duke would travel to every corner of the kingdom, and every eligible maiden in the land was to try on the glass slipper. The woman whose foot it fit would be his bride and the future princess. The news spread like wildfire, filling every household with excitement and anticipation. For the prince, it was a desperate search for his true love. For the kingdom, it was the beginning of a real-life fairy tale. The Grand Duke and his royal entourage began their quest, traveling from house to house, from village to town. The scene was the same everywhere they went. Eager young women pushed forward by ambitious mothers, all tried to force their feet into the delicate slipper. Some had feet that were too long, others too wide. They pushed, they squeezed, they contorted their feet in every imaginable way, but it was no use. The glass slipper would fit only one person, its true owner. The Duke grew weary, seeing the same desperate attempts and disappointed faces time and again. It seemed like an impossible task. Was the mysterious princess just a dream? But the prince's orders were absolute, and so the search continued, bringing them closer and closer to a certain run-down chateau on the outskirts of the kingdom. When the royal announcement reached Cinderella's home, her stepsisters, Drizella and Anastasia, were practically vibrating with excitement. This was their chance. They preened and primped, convinced one of them would be the future princess. Cinderella, meanwhile, heard the news and her heart leaped with hope. The prince was looking for her. She remembered their dance, his kind eyes, the magic of the ball. She started humming the waltz they had danced to, a dreamy look on her face. Her stepsisters, hearing the tune, realized with a jolt that she must have been the one at the ball. Jealousy and rage twisted their faces. How could their scullery maid, their servant, be the beautiful princess who had captured the prince's heart? It was unthinkable. As Cinderella made her way downstairs, ready to present herself to the Grand Duke, her stepmother, Lady Tremaine, stood waiting for her at the top of the attic stairs. With a cold, cruel smile, she simply said, "You're not going anywhere," and turned the key in the lock, imprisoning Cinderella in the dusty attic. Cinderella's heart sank. She banged on the door, pleading to be let out, but it was useless. Her hope turned to despair as she heard the Grand Duke arrive below. Through the keyhole, she could see her stepsisters' comical and painful attempts to squeeze their large feet into the tiny slipper. It was hopeless. Just as the Duke was preparing to leave, defeated once again, Cinderella felt a surge of determination. She would not let her dream be crushed. Just when all seemed lost, Cinderella's loyal friends, the mice Yak and Gus, came to the rescue. They knew they had to help her. While Lady Tremaine was distracted, they bravely undertook a perilous journey. They scurried up the long, winding staircase, dragging the heavy iron key with all their might. It was a monumental effort for the two tiny mice, but their love for Cinderella gave them strength. They heaved and pulled, step by painstaking step, until they finally reached the top of the attic door. With one final push, they slid the key under the door. Cinderella, hearing the faint scrape of metal, saw the key and her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. She quickly unlocked the door, her hope reignited. She was free. Just as the Grand Duke was walking out the door, his search seemingly at an end, a voice called out, "Your Grace, please wait. May I try?" Everyone turned to see Cinderella descending the stairs, looking simple yet elegant in her servant's clothes. Lady Tremaine tried to dismiss her, saying she was just a maid, but the Duke, bound by the Prince's decree that every maiden must try, insisted. He instructed his footman to bring the slipper. However, as the footman approached Cinderella, the wicked stepmother, in a final act of malice, stuck out her cane and tripped him. The glass slipper flew into the air and shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces on the hard floor. A gasp of horror filled the room. It was over. The only proof was destroyed. A triumphant, evil smirk spread across Lady Tremaine's face. The Duke was devastated. His quest had ended in failure. But then Cinderella spoke softly. "But perhaps this will help." She reached into the pocket of her apron and, to everyone's astonishment, pulled out the other glass slipper. The stepmother's face fell, her expression of victory turning to one of pure shock and horror. The Duke's eyes widened in disbelief and then joy. He took the slipper from her hand, his own hands trembling slightly. He knelt before Cinderella and gently slid the glass slipper onto her foot. It was a perfect fit. It slid on as if it were made for her and her alone, because of course it was. The moment was pure magic. The Grand Duke knew he had found her. He had found the prince's true love. Cinderella was immediately escorted from the house, leaving her stepmother and stepsisters frozen in stunned, defeated silence. She was taken to the palace in a royal carriage, no longer a servant in rags, but the princess she was always meant to be. When the prince saw her, his heart recognized her instantly. It wasn't the gown or the glass slippers that he had fallen for. It was the kind, beautiful girl standing before him. He took her hand, his eyes shining with love and relief. He had found her. Without a moment's hesitation, he got down on one knee and asked her to be his wife. Cinderella, her heart overflowing with joy, said yes. Her dreams, the ones she had held onto through years of hardship and cruelty, had finally come true. Their wedding was the grandest celebration the kingdom had ever seen. Everyone rejoiced for the happy couple whose love had conquered all obstacles. Cinderella forgave her stepsisters, showing the same kindness and grace that had won the prince's heart in the first place. She and the prince ruled the kingdom with fairness and compassion, their love story becoming a legend told for generations to come. And as all the best stories end, they lived happily ever after, their lives filled with love, laughter, and the magic that brought them together. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.